So I feel like the era of Star Wars is changing and the shift of Star Wars is happening. I think that the old Star Wars, and by old Star Wars, everything under Disney so far is going to change, and I think it should. Now, whether the actual era switches, whether we go into a whole new type of Star Wars is up to Disney, but I think it is happening, and I think it is required in order to save Star Wars. And by a different era and taking a shift, what I'm referring to is we need to stop making shows about characters. And you might say, well, what do you mean by that? Obi-Wan show bombed, right? And the reason it bombed isn't because of the budget or the amount of episodes or that it got transferred from a movie format to a show format. Those aren't the reasons that it flopped, because, fan films have, 500,000 million budget, and they can be amazing. And getting transferred from a movie to a show can't kill it. It can even make it better. It's up to the script, and that was the problem with the Obi-Wan show, is the script. The whole idea of having Vader and Obi-Wan fight again, stupid. The way they wrote it, stupid. Also, another thing that can be credited to the downfall of the Obi-Wan show is the directing. And I'm talking Deborah Chow, shaky cam, and that's not the downfall. If there's a shaky cam, if Revenge of the Sith had a shaky cam, nobody would care. But because the Obi-Wan show is already bad, it's just another thing you can add on to. So I understand that that's sort of a nitpick, but her directing was rough. I mean, when Vader and Obi-Wan fought the first time, they fought in like some sand dune, and when I say sand dune, it almost sounds cool, but it was like not sand dune, it was like a dirt pile that they fought. And yeah, that was a rough thing to watch. So then you could say, is it up to the budget? It's not up to the budget. It really isn't up to the budget, because I guess maybe they're misusing their budget, but the show got like $90 million, I think, $100 million. You can work with that. I mean, not only you can work with that, like you could use half of that money and make an amazing show, a quarter of that money, make an amazing show. So you can't blame the budget. It's about the writing. Same thing. Book of Boba Fett wasn't actually about Boba Fett. The whole show was to be able to set up Grogu reuniting with Mando, and I do have a video about this. I think it's called The Rise and Fall of the Mandalorian Show. It's on my channel. Maybe a year and a half ago I made it, and it basically explains how the whole Book of Boba Fett show was just there to get Grogu back to Mando. Now, do I remember everything I said in that video? No. But I made some really good points about the whole, how the Book of Boba Fett show is useless. It didn't help Boba's character at all. It really didn't expand the galaxy at all. It just set up Mando and Grogu. I mean, you're thinking, when you're watching the shows, you can get invested into each individual episode, but now that the Book of Boba Fett's been for a while, you can really go back and reevaluate the show, because when you watch it episode to episode, you can be I like part of this, I like this episode, I like that episode, I like this part of the episode, I like when Boba did that thought was cool. But if you really, now that it's over, you look at it, it didn't do anything changing, it didn't change the galaxy. I have a video coming out. I still haven't told anybody the title of the video, what's it about, but I've been talking about it in a lot of my videos. It's going to be a really, really, really good video. It's an amazing script I wrote, amazing editing, so all the good stuff. It's going to be coming out at some point, and in that video, I spend some time talking about the impact of a show, or a movie, and how it's important to have a good impact. And it's not just having an impact on the rest of the media, and Star Wars shows that your show is good. If your show has no impact, then is anything that happened in it even important? So if your show doesn't have an impact on the rest of the content in Star Wars, did your show have a meaning? Was it important? And I think for the Book of Boba Fett, we can say nothing really happened from that show. Really just had to say, okay, Mandalorian Season 2 ended. We need to get and we sent Grogu to Luke to make an emotional scene. I really didn't like. My thoughts have shifted. I'd say a fair amount on The Mandalorian Season 2. When I watched it the first time, I liked it. Get to see Ahsoka, get to see Luke. But, it was really useless. Not as good as Season 1. And, the whole giving Grogu to Luke to make it emotional for Mando. Stupid, because then he just went back. And the whole point of Book of Boba Fett is they go, we sent him to Luke. What do? We need to get him back to Mando because we need to sell our Baby Yoda merchandise. So we need to get him back. So here's what we do. Here's what we do to get Grogu back. We make a show about Boba Fett. Have him do some stupid stuff. Have some flashbacks about how, really, if you're thinking about this, is the most shallow, surface level way of making a show. Let's make a show about the Book of Boba Fett, but it's not about Boba Fett. We just need a way to get Grogu back to Mando. So let's make this show, and then we'll pretend like it's a show about Boba Fett. So what do we make a show about Boba Fett? If you think we're going to go right after, 5 years after Return of the Jedi, the only thing you can think is how he survived the Sarlacc pit. And that was 3 episodes of him just navigating after the Sarlacc pit. It just really shows you a waste of a show. And I think that's the only idea they had. It's okay, we have an idea about how he survived. Then we're going to show where he went, how he basically was with the Tuskens for a while. We're going to do that for 3 episodes just to fill up time, and then we'll get to our main goal, which is reuniting Mando and Grogu. And literally, in the Book of Boba Fett show, I don't know what episode it was, but it was just a Mando episode. There was no Boba Fett. There's no Grogu. It was just a Mandalorian episode in the Book of Boba Fett show. So really, they had a plan. Almost think, people say it was Mandalorian 2.5. I think that's really accurate. It's almost like they were okay, and Mandalorian Season 3 is horrible anyways, but they were we need to change some things. We need some things to happen galaxy-wise, but we can't make it Mandalorian Season 3 because we don't have enough stuff. It's not long enough. We don't have enough stuff. So we're just going to make it a Book of Boba Fett show, but kind of make the whole point of the Book of Boba Fett show to be about Mando and getting our deal done so that we can have Mandalorian Season 3 in order to set up our Mandalorian Grogu movie. So, the reason I'm bringing this up is I do think the era is shifting. I feel like the way we've been conducting, how Disney's been conducting Star Wars is shifting, and it needs to. We do have shows like The Acolyte, and The Skeleton Crew, and even Andor, but that's Andor Season 2, so I don't think they're going to do any more shows about characters after this for a while. I don't think there's ever going to be a Darth Vader show or a Luke show for a while. I think they really have to look forward to making Star Wars new again. They've been, for a while, they have, the Skywalker Saga. They made their sequel trilogy, and for their sequel trilogy, they didn't really, make a new version of Star Wars. Every movie, every trilogy, the prequels and originals were so different. But you could argue that every movie was a new type of way of going about Star Wars. And the sequel trilogy didn't want to make a new way about going about Star Wars. They just kind of wanted to do, okay, what do people love about Star Wars? Let's incorporate those elements into our new characters. So they finish off their Skywalker saga, and then they go, okay, we don't know what we're doing after this, Rise of Skywalker wasn't successful at the box office. We don't know where Star Wars goes after this. So Skywalker saga is complete, but let's just milk it. Just milk it. Just drag everything. Just all the mystery, all the unanswered questions that make Star Wars magic. Everything that is up to your own interpretation. Let's answer every question, even if we don't need to answer, how Boba Fett survived. It's interesting, maybe put it in a comic. But let's just, everything, all the mystery of Star Wars, let's kill the mystery by making shows and ruining characters like Obi-Wan. Let's just milk it until we figure out what we're going to do with Star Wars after that. And I do think they milked it. I don't think there's anything else for them to do. They're going to finish up their shows, The Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Andor Season 2, which I think Andor was supposed to be like 3 or 4 seasons, but they were like, all right, what are we doing here? And yeah, I think the whole era is switching. I think that after Skeleton Crew and Acolyte comes out, they ended the Bad Batch. Why did they end the Bad Batch, you might ask? It was a good running show. I think they're like, okay, we have milked this. Let's go forward with our Star Wars. And that's really what I want. Some people in the community, they'll never support Disney Star Wars. They'll never support characters like Rey and Finn and Poe and those guys. They'll never support them. But I'm willing to give everyone a chance. And they need to make their own Star Wars. They need to make it fresh. And I think the Rey movie is their chance. They really have to nail it. And I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to see what they do. But like I said in other videos, there's nothing holding the Rey movie back. Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch. You have to consider what's happening before your project and after your project. But Rey movies 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker, I believe, you can really do whatever the hell you want. You should be able to just, at free land, make a story, make a great story, and make some cool mystery, make Star Wars new. Make a new idea of interpreting Star Wars. And just have fun with it. And I think that's where Star Wars is going. Now, you can say, well, what about the other stuff that's coming in the later years? Because, I think, this year ends, and then maybe part of 2025 is like their plan that was post Rise of Skywalker. When they're sitting probably in 2019, they're like, all right, let's have a 5-year plan of content that milk this until we figure out what we're doing. So that 5 years is ending this year or early next year, and then it goes into the new era of Star Wars. What are they doing post all this? And what they're doing is 3 movies: The Mandalorian and Grogu, Rey movie, and like The Dawn of the Jedi. And 2 of those movies are like kind of like they can do whatever they want. Rey movie, obviously, because it's after. Rey movie's after everything, so they free reign. They can have, if I was in charge of that movie, and I could do whatever I want, I would just go 100 years in the future. Rey's dead, Poe's dead, Finn's dead. And it could be about Grogu. You could just kill Grogu off at the beginning of the movie and just start fresh. That's what I do. Start fresh, make Star Wars fresh. Let's kill every character. Not kill it. Let's go to a point where no character we know before is there. So now it's like, okay, it is Star Wars, but who's going to be in it? We don't know anyone. Everyone's gone. That's when you make Star Wars new again. Make a new Star Wars. And then, The Dawn of the Jedi. Well, like that whole movie that's being worked on, that's of the set of 3 movies that are coming out, that can be amazing too, because, it does have to look, it really does, actually, I say, like, it does have to keep in mind the Skywalker saga, but it really, really, really doesn't. It can kind of do whatever it wants, because we know the Jedi exist in the Phantom Menace. Where do they come from? And again, like the Old Republic and like the Jedi Sith Wars, while they're like people, like KOTOR, my favorite game of all time, goes into part of that. And you have these High Republic, but really, like, not a lot of stuff is canon. So really, you can, in your thousands of years before the Phantom Menace, you can really do whatever story you want. The only story in the middle is the Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, does that say that the tide is not turning? Is that saying, well, they're really going to try to milk more of the Skywalker saga? I don't know. I don't think that this is another example of an Obi-Wan show, because there was about 20 years between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope, and they milked the crap out of it, right? Rebels, Andor, Rogue One, Solo, made a lot of content between, but we really don't have a lot of content in between 6 and 7. Movies 6 and 7. So if they want it, the Mandalorian and Grogu is that spot in the middle. They can do what they want. They don't have a lot of parameters. Actually, they do have a lot of parameters because they get to get rid of these characters before the sequel trilogy. But so it is going to be rough. So, in a sense, we're kind of still in the era of the Skywalker saga, but they do have more free reign than if, like, let's say, the Bad Batch show. And once The Mandalorian Grogu is the first movie to come out, right? I think that's been confirmed. 2026. Is it May? I don't know when it's coming out. In 2026, they'll probably, I don't know. Have they even decided that? And if they have, would they stick to a date like that? Anyways, 2026 is the first movie that comes out, The Mandalorian Grogu. And then there's 2 new movies I just talked about, the Rain movie and then Dawn of the Jedi. You know, free reign. Once we get over The Mandalorian Grogu, really, you kind of close the book on the Skywalker saga. Now, it should have been closed in 2005 at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But, well, I do like the Clone Wars, but I would say, even as much as I do like the Clone Wars, they should have closed the book on the Skywalker saga in 2005. Because that's a complete, beautiful story. But I think after The Mandalorian Grogu, the book of the Skywalker saga is closed, and then we move on to other things. Because, you know, I say move on, and you say, okay, well, the Dawn of the Jedi isn't moving on. Well, it is moving on, because they're not going to mention anyone in the Skywalker saga. It's not going to have 1,000 years later, so it's fresh. And then, obviously, the Rey movie, the future. It goes on forever, right? You know, we don't know what the start of the Star Wars galaxy is, but you can try to, you can put a lot of stuff in between the Phantom Menace and whatever the beginning of Star Wars is. But there is a beginning of Star Wars. Wherever started that, at some point you'd have to explore it if you wanted to go forward with that plan. But if you go in the future's forever, right? The future doesn't stop. The future doesn't end. The future goes on forever. And, you know, for a company like Disney that just wants to make their money, they should stop trying to milk the Skywalker saga. Like I said, the future goes on forever. If you make a mistake, if you make a bad movie, you make a bad show, just go 100 years in the future. There's no problem with that. Like, if you say this Rey movie's horrible, I'm not saying it's going to be, but, you know, there's a chance, you know. I mean, it's probably high chance, you know. Disney. Let's say the Rey movie's horrible. It's not like, oh, it's not a trilogy, right? So you don't have to, like, stick to it. If the Rey movie's horrible, nobody likes it, nobody watched, the box office horrible, just jump 100 years in the future. You can do that. There's no parameters anymore. So, you know, I think it's going to be really interesting at this next era of Star Wars, and I think we're there after these 2 shows. Mandalorian and Grogu, kind of, you can argue in between, but, like, it's really, the next couple years are looking to be bright or really dark. Because if the Rey movie bombs, and they want to stay in that, you know, time frame, and then you can get this whole mess started up again. But if, let's say, the Rey movie bombs, you can just jump 100 years in the future, but they probably wouldn't do that. So the Rey movie bombs, the Rey movie's horrible, and then they stay in that time, they stay in that era. Then we're repeating the cycle of what Disney's done so far. But, you know, this is their chance. You know, they wanted a chance. They really ruined Star Wars. I'm sure they want a fresh start. They have their fresh start in this new era of Star Wars. Thanks for listening. May the Force be with you. I hit 500 subscribers, so let's double it. Please. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks.